دایی یه فرصت خوب حالا پشت مدافع خداداد عزیزی توی دروازه گل برای ایران خداداد عزیزی باز هم روی زمین گشت سردار آزمون و توی دروازه سردار آزمون گل به نام آزمون و برای ایران
بزنه کریم ازدی فر توی دروازه کریم ازدی فر دروازه پرتغال باز شد
علی دایی سام توپ توی دروازه
اشتباه حرکت از کوچان نژاد فرصت برای کوچان نژاد توی دروازه گل برای ایران.
Welcome back to another Goal Bezan episode. We are breaking down a lot today, guys. We have a recap of friendlies, talking about the beach national team. We're talking about the upcoming tournaments, how much Iran needs to adjust, how much they need to get themselves together. And we're going to have a great long chat. And we're also recording this on Sizde Bedar, so we hope you enjoyed yours if you celebrate Nowruz. I'm here. My name is Samson Tamijani. I'm here with Arya Allahverdi. Arya, what's up?
I'm very good, my friend. Appreciate bringing us on the podcast again for this episode, covering these two friendly matches that were, eventful out the pitch and on the pitch as well.
And I'm also here with Sina Saemian. And listen closely if you're not watching us on YouTube, which you should be. But you'll notice that Arya and Sina are together. What's up, guys?
Hi, Samson. Good to be here, and obviously good to have Arya here as well. For those that don't know, I've been living in Manchester for a very long time, and Arya just moved down to Manchester recently. So it's good to have him here, and good to speak to you as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting one having us in the same room together. It's a bit weird, to be honest with you, but we'll get used to it, hopefully, as we go forward.
Yeah, guys, again, this is going to be a long one. So if you can't listen to it all in one sitting, don't worry, we have timestamps in the description below so you can pick up right where you left off. So no worries on that. Okay, a bit of a side update. On March 26th, Iran resoundingly won the AFC Beach Cup in Thailand, winning the final against Japan 6-0. Job well done to at least one Team Melli, living up to their potential in a tournament performance. Sina, Iran will be one of the favorites for the Beach Soccer World Cup for 2023. That is set for November 16th through the 26th in United Arab Emirates. Wonder if we might see Goal Bezan there. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, Sina, Arya, give us your thoughts on that.
Well, I'm gonna pass this one to Arya because I know he's been following it much closer than I have.
Look, I mean, it was a great tournament for a country. First and foremost, they won it, and they won it very convincingly. They beat Japan 6-0 in the final, which is, if you beat anybody that kind of scoreline in the final in any sport, it's a very good result for them. They're undoubtedly the best team in Asia, no doubt about it. They're obviously one of the best teams in the world in this sport. Iran are very, very, very good when it comes to beach soccer. When it comes to futsal, of course, you'd love to see it in football as well. But they're doing great in those two sports they are sports in their own right. They're not. I don't think they should be used as a tool for football. They are their own sports in their own right, and Iran are very good at it. And they look in Japan in the final did not look particularly strong. They got a Brazilian player they brought in as well. They just didn't really seem like they were in any way, shape, or form going to be able to compete against Iran, who just ran over them the full game, scoring overhead kick goals, just looked very organized defensively, just well known to have great goalkeepers. I don't think Peyman Hosseini actually played in this competition. I'm not sure. I didn't really see him. I didn't watch the beginning stages of it. I watched the final specifically. I don't think he was playing in it, but they've got two other keepers who've done really well, and overall just a great performance all round by the team.
Yeah, whenever that time comes for that World Cup this November, we'll have to keep follow along a lot more, especially some of the main players. They deserve a lot of credit for how they've performed, and we've talked about them in the past for some of their gestures that they gave, but this particularly about the football, magnificent, just completely blowing away the competition.
No, they showed some great braveness when it came to that moment. I don't know when it was. It was last year. I think it was before the end of the year. when they did that celebration with the hair cutting. I don't think that guy was actually in the squad. Said, can't remember his second name. I don't think he was in the squad. I'm not sure if that's a reason why he wasn't in it, but you know, I would imagine that is the case. Hopefully these players get more attention going forward.
Yeah, and will be at full strength as well. All right, another housekeeping item. Asian Football Confederation confirming the pots for the Asian Cup 2023, in which Iran is, of course, in pot 1. That draw scheduled to take place in Doha on May 11th. Pot 1 comprising the reigning champions Qatar, along with Japan, Iran, South Korea, Australia, and Saudi Arabia. So that means all those countries I just named will not be in the same group. Pot 2, including the likes of Iraq, UAE, Oman, Uzbekistan, China, and Jordan. Pot 3, you got countries like Bahrain, Syria, Palestine, Vietnam, Kyrgyzstan, and Lebanon. And pot 4, including India, Tajikistan, Thailand, Malaysia, Hong Kong, and Singapore. And again, this is set for January of 2024. I believe at this point, we still believe it's going to be in Qatar, right, guys?
It'll be in January 24.
Right. So it'll be a bit farther back from previous Asian Cups. The last few Asian Cups, they were 6 months after the World Cup. This is a full year after the World Cup, so a little bit different there. All right, moving on then. The first friendly that we saw of Team Melli in the first action back since the World Cup. It was a draw against Russia in Azadi Stadium. 1-1 goals by Miranchuk. The Russian through a penalty given away by Ezatolahi, fouling in the penalty area, and then Taremi equaled it up shortly after in the second half. It was a bit of a mixed lineup of majority starters from the World Cup. We had Baranvan, Rezayan, Kenani, Khalilzadeh, Hajsafi, Gulizadeh, Ezatolahi, Nur Afkan, and then Mohebi, Moghanlou, and Taremi to top that off. Bit of a mix in the lineup. Arya and I discussed a little bit in the Twitter spaces before the match. How do we think that played out, guys?
I mean, the reality is it was a kind of a necessity to play these players. That was pretty much, a lot of players missing in the squad. So we look at that lineup is as full strength as it could get. I think Jahanbakhsh had a slight injury or illness in the first game, so he couldn't play. But I think he opted to play 4-4-2. So naturally, he's going to play two strikers. Naturally, he's going to play Moghanlou and Taremi together. Azmoun missed the camp for personal issues. I'm not going to get into it more than that. I don't think it's fair on him to get into any more than that. But he got in. He was personal issues, so he wasn't in the squad. So Moghanlou was the kind of third choice striker in the squad. So he played alongside Taremi. I think he opted for Nur Afghan in the middle next to Said. It's a bit of a strange option since Nur Afghan's been playing at left back for most of his time now at Sbornaya for the last couple of years and for the national team. But other than that, it was a pretty much as you can the best you could have that day for the lineup.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's nothing much to add to what Arya said. I think in terms of the game itself, Moghanlou was, I think, he was playing at a level above what he can offer. I think the role he had was interesting, but the execution wasn't quite there. Ezatolahi was particularly disappointing for me. And, for a player that we've talked about for so long down the years in terms of his talent and what he brings or what he can bring, is he still playing the second division of Denmark?
Yeah. Well, they're going to get promoted, but he's still playing there, yeah. So,
you can see that there are still glimpses of his talent, but I think physically he's kind of out of form, and he gave away the penalty as well, which was a really clumsy challenge, and he looked like someone who's not sharp, who's not quite match fit, with a very kind of on-time challenge, and it was a really silly error to give away. And in video games, obviously, will end up being punished overall. But we missed a lot of chances in the game. We missed a lot of chances. But other than that, there's not really much to take away from it. Again, considering that Russia didn't quite have the best team out either, so I think they played a lot of younger players. So good experience, but not much you can take away from that particular game.
I will add as well on side, you can, Russia's team, not the strongest team that they played. Obviously, they haven't played really competitive football for a long time. As we know of the world situation, they're at a war with Ukraine, and they've not been allowed to play by the people that are in charge of world football. So, this was their first competitive game, and they didn't play that well, Russia. And Saeed, having played at the level he is at, in Denmark's second tier, he looked like a guy who's playing in a Danish second tier, against Russia, who weren't even that strong. That seemed as a bit of a bad look on him, because you expect him to play against a Russian team. He also played in Russia for a little bit as well. He should go out there and do well, but it wasn't the case.
Yeah, and I think in general we expected more from the veterans of the World Cup in terms of just overall execution. I don't feel like we saw enough of Haj Safi leading from the back, of Ezatoli, like you just mentioned. But positives, like you said, Mohedi, 24-year-old who plays for Estaval right now on loan from Portuguese side Santa Clara. Another positive in the match, so many chances created. Say what you will about all the mess with the coaching situation, but in the first match, speaking just for the first match, the chance and opportunity creation was fantastic. Can't complain about that, except when you get down to the finishing. The finishing was not up to standard. A bit of a double-edged sword there. So with that being said, just from looking at the tougher competitive match, which was the Russia game, was 4-4-2 the right answer moving forward?
Look, I think it makes sense on paper, because you've got two top strikers, Taremi and Azmoun. You want to get them on the pitch. You put them together, hopefully they'll do something. It worked in qualification for Skocic. Not always, sometimes it was like almost like an over-reliance on them, where they were the only ones doing anything in the game, and they kind of got us through matches. And I felt like the formation, although it worked for them, it didn't work for the rest of the team, because we don't have a particularly strong midfield. Playing a two in the middle, you need two guys who can be very good in all parts of the game, defensively, going forward, open the game up. I don't think we've got that, so it works for Taremi and Azmoun. I don't think it works for midfield, but it obviously worked in this game when it came to creating chances, which is good to see. We created chances, and we did get there. We got to the final third. We got in good positions to score goals. Unfortunately, this time around, they couldn't finish it, which is like normally the other way around. We can normally get there and finish it. We can't actually create a lot of chances, but this time we could, and we couldn't finish them, which was a disappointment. But I personally speaking, we'll come on to it. I don't think a guy like Mohanlu.
So with Mohanlu, I mentioned earlier that he had an interesting role in the team, in the sense that he was dropping deep quite often when we had the ball to receive, to play 1-2s. And I think that works out quite well, although he's probably not the right player to do that with. So, and again, having Mohebi was very interesting, and also Olizada on the right, they were the main reasons why we created so many chances. Olizada, every time we watch him play, every time he gets on the ball, he looks like he's about to do something. And I think that works out in any formation that he's played, whether he's on the Kairos playing a 4-3-3 on the wing, or now in a 4-4-2. So I think we would like to see more of him. But also with 4-4-2 off the ball, in order to minimize the space that you give to the opponent, you have to play a lot narrower to close down those spaces. And I think we got caught out a few times, especially in the first half, where Russia could receive the ball between our defensive line and our midfield line. And in those situations, again, you either play really narrow, or one of the midfielders usually drops a little further just to protect the back line. So I think there's room for improvement there. But as Arya said, when you have two world-class strikers like Azmoun and Taremi, who you will be relying on to win games, you will need to find a way to play both of them up front, and whether that's 4-4-2 or playing with 3 at the back, he's got options. He's just got to use his friendlies and make sure he comes up with the right strategy.
Well, in some games, you might not have Taremi converting all of his chances. He definitely did it against Russia. He scored the penalty, yes, but I mean, man, you really expected more. I was waiting for him to just completely break out and get 2 straight successful finishes in a row or something, but it didn't pan out. He didn't see himself.
No, and it wasn't just him. I think even Mohebi, I know we were impressed with him, but again, if we are to rely on him on the biggest stage, there needs to be more decisive action in terms of they were dwelling on the ball a couple of times, or when it gets to the final moment, they were almost too casual. You know, the shot was taken kind of late. It was a very laid back attitude when they got into the box, and obviously you can't afford to play that way, certainly next January when the Asian Cup comes up.
I would assume with Ghalenoei, with the way he played against Russia, he knew that there would be chances there, especially at halftime. He knew that chances were there. So that's why maybe he let up a little bit on those defensive gaps, like Sina, you were just mentioning. So it was definitely the mentality, or I guess expectations, that this match would end in a victory. Going based off the opportunity, it should have been at least 3-4-1, but it just didn't turn out that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that the player that really kind of always seems to have a good game for the national team, especially in the last few months, is Arya. You know, he's somebody who I think has really come through since Queiroz came back for that little period. As he's become a very top player again. You know, he had a little bit of a bad spell in Qatar. He was playing the striker for Al Salia, and he was really the same player he used to be. But now all of a sudden something's changed for him, and now he's an important player. And you've seen it against Kenya. We'll come on to later as well. So it's good to see him there, and also you have Harambe on the bench as well, and he played against Kenya. So in that respect, in the fullback area, especially at right back, we've got options, and maybe this formation, maybe even a 3 at the back would suit them too, because you know they're natural kind of forward-going players. So maybe they would suit them, and you could fit players around them to kind of impact. But I don't know if that's Ghalenoei's thinking, but we'll see what happens. You know, there were positives to take against Russia. There are definitely positives to take. I'm not sure he took them into the Kenya game. You know, I'm not sure that those positives were actually taken into the Kenya game, which is a little bit worrying. And also negative as well is that Alireza, as Sina mentioned, very important player, is now injured. He sustained an injury to his meniscus. He's going to be out for approximately 1 month. So, you know, another one that's a bit of a damper on the situation.
Samson, you also mentioned Nur Afghan, was it you? I can't quite remember, playing the central midfield. I've been saying this for the last couple of years, that he's a natural successor to Harambe Stars. You know, Harambe started at a very young age at national team, played left back, played left midfield, central midfield. Nur Afghan, not a key player, and shouldn't be relied on as a starter, but he's a good utility player, certainly when it comes to tournaments to take. He can fit in a number of positions. And also, yes, he plays left back for Sbornaya, but he can still do a job in centre midfield. Again, comparing it to Harambe, for example, in the 2014 World Cup. The lead up to that, Harambe was playing on the left-hand side with his left wing back, left back himself. But then in the World Cup, he was playing a central role. So with these players who are quite versatile, it's good to try them in different positions and to kind of keep them around the squad, because again, when it comes to tournaments where you have a limited number of players that you can take, taking someone like Nur Afghan who can, like I said, play 2 or 3 different positions certainly works in everyone's favor.
خطر روی دروازه ما، یه ضربه با پای چپ که دقت کافی رو ندارند و از جمله لژیونرهای فوتبال کنیا در حین که بلژیک بازی میکنه، یه حرکت رو به جلو خطرناک بود، حرکت در جاگیری خوب عمل میکنه. باز هم برای اولونگا، یه حرکت تکنیکی از اولونگا، اعتقاد داره اونجا به روی او خطا انجام شده مدافع ما. اولونگا میزنه و دروازه رو باز میکنه. عرض کردم شناخت او از فوتبال ما در رقابت‌های باشگاه آسیا. در رفت و برگشت باز هم یه بازیکن کنیا روی زمین، آفساید نیست. محبی نیمکیز شدن تماشاگرها. محبی حرکت میکنه، دور میزنه، منتظر حرکت دیگه میمونه از هم تیمیاش، میفرسته کوتاه و رضاییان رو دستش قرار میگیره محبی، یه پاس به عقب، یه فرصت عالی. رامین رضاییان مستقیم میزنه، داور نقطه کرنر رو نشون. یا حالا رامین رضاییان میتونن استفاده ببرن. چجوری داره دفاع میکنه کنیا، تیمی که داره خودش رو آماده میکنه یک دگرگونی اساسی. و عرض کردم ما باید به گل میرسیدیم و یه ارسال خوب و محبی که بازی قبلی چند تا موقعیت خوب گلزنی داشت، موقعیت هم خلق کرد، اینجا سکوها رو اینطور غرق در شادی میکنه. گل مساوی رو زدیم در یک بازی. روی زمین حرکت رضاییان با پای چپ، اشتباه و توی دروازه. گل دوم، برتری داشتیم، حقمون بود و به حقمون هم رسیدیم. کار تمرین شده ترکیبی و البته اشتباه ماتاسی اینجوری ما رو خوشحال میکنه با پرچمای کشورمون. یک بار دیگه ساکاری یه اشتباه میرفت گل دوم رو برای کنیا در پی داشته باشه و به نظر بله.
Moving on to the second match, it was hosting Kenya, 101st ranked team in the world. Not the toughest competition, but you get Russia one game, then you get an African team in the next. Good to test out rotation of players, and that lineup was Niazman Moharami, Kenani again, Sohrabian, Hajsafi again, Jahanbakhsh steps in, Ruzbe Cheshmi, the Welsh golasso giant that he is, Karimi, Mohibi, Moghalu, and Taremi for the top. Goals by the captain for Kenya, Olunga. It was not the best moment for the defense. We're going to get on that in a second, guys. But Mohibi with a great header to equalize, and then the own goal created by Rezayan. Was Rezayan that created the forced the own goal? Yeah, forced the own goal by Matasi, the goalkeeper. He tried a ground pass, cross, went straight to the goalie. Fortunately, bounced right back off of him and into the net. So yeah, just it's a reaction to that. Was Kenya better than we expected, or was it just one of those bad nights for the combination of players that Iran used?
I think we underestimated Kenya a little bit. I said it before the game as well. I think Kenya have a couple of decent players. For example, Okumu, their centre back, plays for Ghent, had a decent game. The striker Olunga is well known to cause Iranian defenders issues. Kanoni and Khalid both faced him. He's got something like 30 goals in 30 games for his club in Qatar. He's in unbelievable goal scoring form. And actually down the road, Man United were looking to sign him. There was rumours that he might go to Man United. So, he's a player who's got a bit about him. And as you mentioned, he made Sorabian look very silly in that situation. It was not a good look. I mean, he face planted on the floor.
Was that his first cap, guys?
Yes, it was. Yeah, he's not his first call up. He's been in the squad since Queiro's first stint, and obviously under Scottish for a little while. He was called up, and then obviously got a debut on the Ghaleneoi. But yeah, it was not a good look, was it? I mean, the face plant on the halfway line against Kenya, be it a guy who's scoring a lot of goals, is not a good look.
Knowing that you're the last guy, and if the ball gets past you, it's a. But
also on top of that, Samson, you mentioned Sorabian, but also Kanoni. And if you go to the video, if people are watching on YouTube, in that situation, you've got to be more aggressive. You've got to go and win the ball. And I know you're the last man. You think you're trying to hold the game. There's no one recovering. If there's no one recovering trying to help you out, you've got to commit to the tackle, because you've got a goalkeeper in goals who might save it. If you let him get close to goal, you're giving him a shot at goal that's going to be easy to take. If he's a little bit further away from goal and you put a tackle and you win it, you won the ball back. If you don't win it, at least you put him under pressure. His shot might be a little bit wonky, might be all over the place. You put a bit of pressure on him. He just stood off him for 20 seconds, whatever it was, and he let him get in the box and shoot, which isn't good from a guy who had a good qualification, always didn't play in the World Cup, was a little bit upset about it as well. Put on his Instagram, feelings as well out there. So overall, not good defending in that goal and deservedly conceded because it just wasn't good enough.
Well, it wasn't just that as the only bad moment. There was a lot leading up to it in the first half, Sina, and then in the second half, just nothing materializing, no passes, no cohesive passing in the attacking third, unlike the Russia match. And it brought the vibe. They were just inviting Kenya to have some kind of promising counterattack, and that is exactly what happened.
It's the rule of football, isn't it? You know, if you allow the opposition the space, if you take it easy, regardless of who it is, whether it's Kenya or any other country, they will get a chance. And I think Iran were a little bit more, again, laid back, a bit maybe complacent. And as Arya said, Olunga has been terrorizing the Iranian clubs in the Champions League for the last few years. And maybe it was about PTSD for Ghalenoei as well, having failed to stop him over a number of times. I think time at Persepolis and probably in Qatar as well, where he's playing right now. But as Arya said, he was caught in no man's land, where you're not pressurizing the attacker, you're not necessarily closing the space either. So it just makes it easy for the attacker. And as far as Sohrab is concerned, look, I think also again that he's a player that is out of place almost. He doesn't belong in that level. It's not an issue. I say it's not an issue in the sense that that's exactly what the friendlies are for. You bring in players that you think can help the team, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. The key thing is, now that we've seen him play such a poor performance, because it wasn't just that particular error. There were a number of times where on the ball, he was giving the ball away with poor decision making. And again, from a defensive side, he almost, I think, scored an own goal as well from a free kick. So again, what should be taken away from that performance is players like Sohrab shouldn't be involved in the camps going forward. But putting that aside, there was no game plan as such on the ball. Iran almost found it really difficult to bring the ball out of defense. And I think in these games where, yes, Kenya do have a couple of key players, but we're not playing against the likes of Japan or South Korea. But this is a team that on average has lesser players than us, and as a team they've not been playing for since when? Since 2017, 2018?
Kenya,
yeah,
they've not played since 2021, November 2021, the last qualification game for the World Cup.
Again, over a year. So you're expected to go in that game at home to stamp your authority. So yes, we came away with a win, but in these games the result doesn't matter as much as the performance does. And although we did end up winning the game on a set piece and on an own goal, the performance lacked throughout the team.
Feels like a bit of Arya. It feels like a bit of deja vu. A couple of us on Twitter are talking about the comeback win against Lebanon in the World Cup qualifiers. It seemed like a really similar match. I
was going to say that because it's an interesting one. It's a positive from a mentality standpoint because we've come back and won a game where we were 1-0 down. It's quite rare. I actually never done it under Carlos Queiroz. So to do it on his first game, second game, Ghaleneoi is good, but it's against Kenya, so it's not particularly impressive. But also, I will add, he overall, as I said, there are positives. It's a friendly match. Why do we do friendly matches? It's about preparation. It's about understanding your team. It's his second game in charge, so he wants to understand who he has available. And obviously, as I mentioned, we had a lot of players missing this camp, right? Let's not forget that. We had Majid Hosseini missing, Ali Karimi missing, Sardar, Azmoun, so on and so forth. Quite a lot of players are missing, right? So ideally, he would have a much better squad. So he played players like Mohamed Karimi, who had a good performance the first half, looked good on the ball. He's always been quite a good player, in my opinion, even when he was playing in the PGPL and for Sepahan. I remember one season he was top assister in the PGPL. He got 7 assists or something like that in one season, which is quite a lot for the PGPL. So he did really well, and actually recently scored against Persepolis as a last-minute goal and won the game. So he's doing well, and he's got his start. But then he was taken off at halftime, and who came on for him? It was Milad Salak, who I've been saying this for a long time shouldn't be there. Similar to Sohrab. These are players who I know. As Sina mentioned, yes, it's a friendly. He wants to test players out. You're not testing someone out. You've already seen how not so good he is. Sohrab was one of his players at Gold Gohar. You know, I understand he wants to give his own player a chance, but you should understand what level he's at. You know, if you're seeing him week in, week out. In my opinion, Sbornaya shouldn't be there, even if for a friendly match, but he is. And then Salah comes in, not particularly impressive for Mohamed Karimi, who probably needed 90 minutes, you know, in this game. Didn't get it, and he's still giving 90 minutes to guys like Mohebi, who didn't really need it. Morano didn't need 90 minutes, in my opinion, in this game. I think he came off at like 91st minute for Azadi. So overall, it's like just a bit strange, just some of his on-field decisions. But you know, I hope that there are improvements in the camps going forward. We will speak about that. But there were positives. Again, Reza had a good game. You got the assist for Mohebi, which may have been offside. You know, there's some images that make it look like he is offside, Mohebi. So there were positives for sure, but there's definite negatives there that need to be addressed.
And what about the established guys, Kenani, Hashsafi, Taremi in the Kenya game? I was waiting for them to kind of lead the way. You know, it's a mixed lineup, some new guys. They didn't necessarily step up either.
No, and look, I agree with Arya that there's a lot of players missing. But having said that, you know, the backbone of the team is still there. The backbone of the team was still playing. You know, Ghaleneoi and Alireza have been playing together, firstly, for many years at Persepolis, and have been playing together for Team Melli for the last 3 or 4 years, barring the couple of months that Kairos was in charge. So, you know, there shouldn't be, for example, lack of communication and not knowing what the other person's habits or traits are. But these two have pretty much through their professional career built a really good, or should have built a very good relationship on the pitch. So yeah, they were overall very disappointing because, as you said, you would expect those guys to step up and maybe at times grab the new guys and show them the way to say, you play with this mentality, or this is how we should structure the game. But there was none of that. And look, if we approach these 2 games, and if we sat here in another parallel universe where Iran beat Russia 3-0 and then ended up beating Kenya 5-0, everyone would be raving about. But what we have to understand is if that happened, it doesn't necessarily mean that Ghaleneoi is the answer to all the questions based on 2 games. And now that we sit here with a acceptable performance against Russia and a disappointing one against Kenya, at the same time, it's not the end of the world either. So there's got to be a balance in everything. I think between now and the Asian Cup, through the friendlies and the competition as well, which I think Arya is going to discuss very shortly in the summer, it's across that period which we'll have an idea of how Ghaleneoi is going to be, or how the new setup is going to be, not based on 2 performances, like I said, whether it was the best performance in the world or the worst.
Yeah, and Sina, that pretty much covered what I was going to ask. You know, we've had these 2 initial matches to start off the Ghaleneoi era, only a few weeks after he was hired, less than that after he finalized his staff, which includes the likes of former Team Melli captain Andre Temurian. Was this enough to give a judgment on him?
You know, it is early days, of course it is. You know, I think everyone will say that, but what is the objective of this national team? Objective is to go to the Asian Cup and perform well. And how that's what, 8 months away, 9 months away. So, you know, it is early days, but it's not also early days because you've got to get started quickly. His contract is a short-term contract that may be extended. There are some rumors that he might extend it before the Asian Cup, but at the moment in time, it's short-term, and short-term contract means you better get onto a good start as fast as possible, because if you don't, then the team isn't going to be as prepared as it should be. You know, our next friendlies are in June, which is 3 months away, 2 months away. So, you know, you haven't got a lot of time with the team. The ones after that are in September, and then you've got December, and that's it. You're in the Asian Cup.
So what is the objective?
They've got to be prepared early. They've got to.
No, what is the aim goal that they're preparing for?
Win the Asian Cup.
Win the Asian Cup.
100%.
And we think that Ghaleneoi is going to win the Asian Cup.
That's the thing. So, and I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case. I don't think with this team that we've got.
Is it bad that we're chuckling right now, Arya?
No, but you know what I'm talking about. You know, I think that the federation put it out there like it is their objective. Like that's what they want to try and do. But then when you can't bring in a coach that can provide that objective to you, you shouldn't make it an objective. That's the problem. They set expectations not knowing what level they're at. And unfortunately, at this moment in time, this team is not prepared, in my opinion, even to compete against Saudi Arabia, against South Korea. South Korea would, in my opinion, they would smash us. In my opinion, I think they would smash us the same way they did in Seoul when we played them in the qualification. I think Saudi Arabia would beat us. I think Japan would beat us. I think Australia are really becoming a good nation in the last couple of years, and I think they would beat us. And I don't think Iran can compete with that.
So the objective for the federation is to win the Asian Cup. But for us, we know they're not going to win the Asian Cup.
No, absolutely not.
So I think we need to take that into consideration when we look at these friendlies, because I completely agree, and I think you hit the nail on the head. He needs to hit the ground running. We don't have a lot of time. So technically, they should start the preparation, and this should give us an idea of how Asian Cup's going to go. However, we know even if Ghalenoei is given 3 years rather than 1 to prepare for an Asian Cup, it's very unlikely that he'll win it. So I know it's a very silly question, which I don't really have the answer for. But again, what is the objective? Because we're not going to win it. So are we just going there to reach the semi-final, to reach the quarter-final? Another repeated episode of the Asian Cups that I've seen in my lifetime. We reach the quarters, we go out in penalties, probably to South Korea again, or reach the semis on a one-off occasion and then lose to Japan. So and again, there are, and I don't want to keep dragging this conversation, but you look at the squad you could argue that is good enough. We don't lack talent, but then there has got to be a difference. The manager makes that difference between a good squad, even a very good squad, to a top squad to be able to win a tournament. And Ghalenoei is not that guy. And that's not a criticism of him. It's just, you look at his resume, he doesn't really kind of breed confidence.
I will add one thing. First and foremost, we haven't won an Asian Cup since 1976, right? Before the revolution, a long time ago, right? This is a long, we were never like, we were little embryos. We weren't even that, you know what I mean? So we were, you know what I mean? So to us, that is nothingness, right? That time. The reality is we haven't even come close to winning. Yes, we got to the semi-final, but we got beat by Japan. Let's be honest with you. I don't care how the game went. We were nowhere near the final the way we played against Japan. The point is, in my opinion, the Asian Cup at this moment in time shouldn't really mean a lot for Iran, because it doesn't really have a lot of historical meaning to it for this team. The only thing that does is the World Cup, because we've had some success in the World Cup when it comes to playing against the top teams, against Portugal, Spain. You played really well in 2018. So the real objective is the World Cup in 2026, right? That's the real objective. We can, in my opinion, the Asian Cup is a fake objective. It's just there because it's there. We're gonna go to it. Might as well try and win it. That's what it's almost like.
A benchmark.
Yeah, it's just like a little stepping stone. So the reality is we need to prepare our team for the next World Cup. And the only way they can do that is, at the moment in time, the federation, we spoke in the last podcast, need to be preparing for who comes after Ghalenoei. And if they're not doing that, if they're putting all their eggs in the Asian Cup's basket to hope that he wins it for them, that's a mistake, in my opinion, because, again, that's not the real objective.
And we'd find ourselves in the same position that we've been in the last couple of months, except with 1 year less to the World Cup.
And then just back on the friendly matches, you speak about young players, you speak about bringing in a new generation of footballers. We didn't see a lot of that. So again, it looks to me like Ghalenoei is taking this objective of World Cup very seriously, because he's still playing players who relatively are in that kind of prime years, people who at the moment in time are really playing well. He's not looking for the future. So that's not the plan right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about. There are some reports of some, dare I say, dysfunction or just really weird approach to the training camp of what was going on. Sina, Arya, can you touch a little bit on that for those who have not yet heard?
Well, there were some reports, well, more than reports, there were some whispers that players such as Hasbavi, such as Islami, who got called up, young players who are uncapped. Well, Hasbavi got his first cap against Russia, but he played like 2 minutes. But the reality is, some of these players in training are being told to sit out and watch the training from behind the goals or from the sidelines and observe the experienced players train.
As if they're watching a World All-Stars match.
Yeah, as if, Hasbavi is going to learn from Ghaleneoi, because he's got some fantastic defensive skills, and Ghaleneoi is going to show him how to be professional and these things, learn from these players, watch them play, because, they're very, very experienced and they've been to 2 World Cups. And, yeah, I'm obviously being sarcastic, but the point is, if you're going to call up a player to a national team, what are you telling this player? You're telling him that he is ready to play at national team level, right? Even if he isn't, that's what you're telling him. So you cannot then sit him out and say to him, okay, you're here, now watch these players play. That's not what you do. That's not national team level. That is not national team football. That is basically you calling up somebody just because you want to, for whatever reason, show the world that, or show the country that, Javon Gary, you're trying to, show your young players what. No, that's not what you're doing here. That is what U20s are for. That's what U21's for. That's what U23's for. That's not what that senior national team is for. Senior national team is the best players getting called up and playing. Right? Am I wrong?
No, and I agree with the overall point that Arya makes. I don't necessarily disagree that he can't learn anything from Ghaleneoi or Ghaleneoi, because these players, again, although yes, they're not good enough to play at a World Cup, but they're still at a higher level than those young players are at this moment in time. So I don't necessarily agree with that. However, if Ghaleneoi was bringing in, let's say, the under 15s, under 16s national team, and say, right, guys, you sit and watch essentially the adults, the senior team, and learn from them, learn how they train. I can accept that. That is good.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about players, regardless of the age, whether 19 or 30, that are already playing at a level where majority of the national team players are playing, which is in the domestic league, and they've showed to be at a good level, they've put out some good performances that they deserve to be there, then no, they're not that lower level to sit on the side and watch. They need to be involved. If you're trying to get them to get back, to improve and to maximize the experience, you need to train with these guys. They need to play at that. They need to be able to train against Mehdi Taremi, who's a Champions League quality footballer, against Jahanbakhsh, a player who played in the Premier League. Not to stand on the sideline. And what are they gaining, really? Because they could do that. I mean, Hasbavi play for Fulham?
Yep, regularly. Yep.
Where he can watch Ashkan Dejoga, who's probably technically still better than some of the players who've got in the national team. In that same team, they've also got players who played in La Liga, the Spanish players, and they were coached by Jahanbakhsh. So they're already getting that experience of watching these guys and training with them. So why are they not good enough to train with the national team?
I will add as well, if you're a young player, right? Let's say you're 19 years old and you've been called up, obviously you're going to be excited. You're going to be, on a high getting called up. When a coach comes to a player and says, observe and watch, right? I guarantee you, young players don't actually do that. No young player is going to sit there and start observing and taking notes as if it's like a university degree. You know what I mean? They're not going to do that. Like, you can say that. You can happily say that to anybody. No one's physically going to do that. Especially if he's older, he's 24 years old, he's a little bit more experienced, he's got level head. Sure, young players, especially a guy who was captaining the U20 team, he scored 2 goals in the Asian Cup. He isn't going to do that. So young players have to play. Simple as that. They have to be given chances, especially in training. That's very important. So Ghaleneoi, unfortunately, from what I've heard anyway, hasn't done that. He's let players, he's wanted players to sit off and observe and watch. And he's also, just kind of not disregarded them. He still played them, 2 minutes against Russia, but that's nothing. You know what I mean? So for me, he needs to do more in that respect.
We talk about young players missing valuable time in training and playing. We also saw no game time for some veterans such as Noor Allahi and Vahid Amiri. Now, Noor Allahi, 30 years old, Vahid Amiri, 35 years old. So I would assume this is not as surprising. He hasn't straight up said, no, they're not in our plans for the future. But nonetheless, Arcala didn't get playing time.
Yeah, but it's a bit surprising. Noor Allahi has been ever present for the national team for a long time, and surprised didn't play any minutes in these games. Maybe he's not part of Ghalenoei's plans. I don't think Vahid Amiri. I didn't even know. I actually forgot he got called up by Vahid Amiri. I forgot about it completely that he was called up. So that he didn't play was not much of a surprise until I saw it afterwards. But it is what it is. It's they are older players, so maybe that's good. Maybe it's good for guys like Noor Afghan to come in, as we mentioned. So yeah, I'm surprised, but I'm also not surprised. It's not a problem for me.
What do we want to see in these next few camps? We already touched on. We only have less than a handful of camps before the actual Asian Cup. What do you want to see differently in these next camps? We didn't have Azmoun. We touched on that. We didn't have Saman Khodous. We didn't have Syed Manesh. Very key, potentially key players.
Majid Hosseini.
I mean, we didn't have Abid Zadeh. We talked about that before. What needs to change personnel and mentality and in training camp?
I think, look, in terms of the training camps, what you would want to see or what you would expect if you were the manager is, you want to try other players in certain positions to see how much depth the team has. The best way to do that is to have, I think, from the 11, 5, 6 players who are guaranteed starters. So, you are talking about the likes of, let's say, for example, Bezan, Taremi, Azmoun, Zatullahi, maybe Jahanbakhsh, Ghaleneoi, a good group of them starting and then playing lesser experienced, younger players that you think can have a potential of helping them alongside them. Because it's only in that environment of playing what you would expect to see in the Asian Cup that you can see whether they can help the team or not. If you play a younger player with another 10 players who've not even made a debut for the national team, what are you really learning? Because they're not really going to play, they're not playing with players that they would expect to play with come the Asian Cup. So I think a mix and a balance is always the right approach. And I would expect more of a kind of a better tactical game, whether it's on the ball or off the ball, a better strategy than what we witnessed in these two friendlies. And also, you mentioned something earlier that I think is a good point. What if Taremi is having a bad day, or what if Azmoun is injured, which was the case, or really had personal issues, etc. You can't predict what's going to happen in the Asian Cup. So what then? Are you going to then stick with playing 2 players up front, even though the second choice striker isn't going to be anywhere near the quality of Azmoun and Taremi? Or are you going to try a different formation, a plan B as such? Maybe play 3 in midfield, see what kind of combinations work. So that's what it comes down to for me. Maybe playing one game with what you would expect to start with a couple of new players, and the second game being more experimental with a new formation, new tactic, and seeing how that works.
Regarding again our strikers, obviously Azmoun was missing. We called up Moghalu. You've got Ansari Fard there, and I know we're speaking about young players, but I don't see how Ansari Fard doesn't make this squad still. He's still scoring goals for in Cyprus in the Cypriot league for Omonia. He scored against by United the Europa League recently, and also you look at he brought in Azadi, who was a defender for a little bit for Teraktor, and then he played in midfield for most of his career for obviously Saipa, obviously. So and obviously now he's playing for Persepolis, but I think as a striker, if I'm not mistaken. All right, Teraktor, yeah. And he was at Persepolis for a bit as well, but he was a Teraktor again. Come back, but now he's a striker. And he called him up over Ansari Fard as a striker. which is a bit, and I know he's scoring goals. He scored 8 goals or whatever it may be, but it doesn't make any sense. Ansari Fard is by far a better striker than Azadi, by far a better striker than Moghonlu. Moghonlu, yes, he's top goal scorer in the Persian Gulf Pro League, doesn't necessarily mean it should be getting in the squad. You know, Shaba Azadeh was scoring 20 goals a season for Sepon a little while ago, and he wasn't getting called up, you know? So, in my opinion, being the top goal scorer in the PGPL is not a good thing for you then to translate to call-ups for the national team when you have guys like Zahedi, who plays in Europe, got guys like Ansari Fard playing in Europe, and then you bring in an Azadi. So that's just one point. And then obviously, as I mentioned, future camps, we want to see players like Shekari playing, like Hossein Zadeh playing as well, who's also playing regularly at Charleroi, got 3 minutes of game time or 10 minutes against Russia. Not enough, in my opinion. So I want to see in future camps play players who either deserve it, who we know will provide us good performances, and don't play players that we know for a fact now that Shorabian and Shayar Moghonlu are not standard for the national team.
But also, you know, I agree with you that Ansari Fan arguably could get into the squad, but you know, we've talked at length over how we need to move past these guys. The only way to move past them is to try new players. Ansari Fan come to the Asian Cup could very well be in the squad, and that's fair. How would you, until Moghonlu plays for the national team, how are you going to know he's not good enough? So there's a lot of examples. You know, you talk about Mortazoklu Ali-NG, who's playing defensive midfield for Nafa Tehran when he was initially drafted into the Iranian squad, and then he became one of the main centre backs for years to come. So, although I agree with you, I think Ansari Fard is still good enough to be in the squad, but that's the point. You know, we can't request the likes of Hossein Zadeh, Karimi, and all these players to play without anyone getting dropped.
Well, I think you're right. You know, you need to see if someone's good at until they actually they've played. But the problem is we haven't got a lot of time, and the more time we waste experimenting with players like that, the less preparation we get for the Asian Cup, if that is their objective. So I'm trying to play it in their hands. You know, them saying that the objective is the Asian Cup. If that is the case, then you can't waste time experimenting. If that isn't the case, and the objective is to go to the World Cup in 2026 with a stronger team that we know who's good and who's bad, discarding the bad players, then this is what you should do. But I don't think that's the case for the Federation, at least. So, again, we'll see what happens. There's a lot of time to go still, but it wasn't a great start, let's just be honest.
It sounds like the national team could use some good analysts.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Which
started on that, Samson.
Okay, it's for all who have not seen, Arya put out a good tweet that generated a lot of traction, calling attention to this issue. Ali Kamangari, the Barcelona online school analyst, who presumably we haven't heard from, we haven't heard all sides here, but I mean, it's just what is on public social media, what is on, I mean, that's the resume that was presented, presumably paid 400 euros for one of his certificates, which that and his Iranian media work during the World Cup apparently earned him a spot as the national team analyst. Arya, I think you know a little bit more on this. You also had a tweet, as we mentioned, as you can see. Arya, care to catch us up to speed on this for some who aren't as familiar with the situation?
Yes. The facts are that Ali Kamangari, he is a guy who did journalism work for Varzeh, who are the publication of sport in Iran. He did work for their publication for a long time, creating analysis surrounding the Persian Gulf Pro League. He made videos, he was involved in making videos about analysing the players in the Persian Gulf Pro League, the teams, and also he wrote articles for various publications like Tarafdari in Iran, and also Breaking the Lines, which is a foreign international scouting network that writes articles on players and from various leagues around the world. So he's done quite a lot of work journalistically involving that analysis of players. Now, he's had some experience within club football as well, with Messi Rafsanjan, working for a couple of months at that club as an analyst. So that's decent experience, but that's the experience he's had at club level, and that's him from a footballing standpoint. Externally, he's been a veterinary student for a few years, studying veterinary at university. So he's done different fields, which is totally fine. You can do that. But the problem I had, right now, this is not a problem that I don't. He might be a great analyst, by the way. I've said it before. He might be a fantastic analyst. Not a problem. The issue is when it comes to standardizing the position and the roles and the qualifications that people have. In world football, okay, now we're talking about national team football. World football, if somebody wants to apply for a role within any field, especially within coaching or scouting or analysis, you must have an accredited qualification from a governing body that FIFA or whoever it may be, AFC, UEFA, have governed and have certified that is a legitimate qualification. The reason being is because you have to make sure that whoever's working for your club, your national team, is got a minimum standard of qualification and knowledge that meets the criteria of your country, right? That's very important. I know it doesn't seem important for everybody. It's very important because if you just bring some randomer in, you can't guarantee he has it. And he might be good, but it's very risky, and it also sets a bad precedent for future, because someone else can just easily do that and come into the national team, and then they might not be as good. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying he's a bad analyst. What I'm saying is this sets a bad precedent for future people applying for this role, because his role as an analyst of the national team is vital. It's extremely important. Just very quickly, being an analyst of the national team means you provide information to the head coach, who doesn't see the players every week. So you've got to be on the ball. You've got to provide information that's good. That's good source of information coming from directly yourself or your team of analysts that are providing the coach with the players' performances, how they do for their clubs. These things are vital for the national team, probably more so than club teams. So his role is important, no doubt about it. The problem is AFC's badges, I've said it on my follow-up tweet, they don't hold enough weight. They don't hold enough credibility in the footballing world. UEFA badges hold a lot of weight. You know yourself, Sina. They hold a lot of weight in world football. AFC's not so much. And the problem is he doesn't have that. So he has a job now that is world football related. It's national team football, potentially World Cup team. And he's got a Barcelona certificate, which isn't a legitimate analysis qualification. It isn't, because you could get one from Real Madrid, from Bayern Munich. You get one from anybody. That doesn't make any sense. It's just not a qualification that anyone can do it. I could apply for it. Guy off the street can apply for it. That isn't a qualification that's legitimate. You need to be either registered to your governing body and then apply for the role, and then you've got it, or you qualify for it, you do the course, you assess for it, and then you get it. Not just some random Joe doing an online course for 4 months and then getting a national team job. So that's an issue, because if, let's say, a new coach comes in and the next analyst has the same qualification, he gets a job and he's not as good, we can't identify who's good and who's bad. So that's the issue I have.
I mean, there's not much I can add to that. Arya is absolutely right. I'm not so hung up on the qualification part, because we can't expect everyone to have UEFA Pro licenses, and even though they should, the federation won't be able to afford to pay salaries for UEFA Pro licenses just to be an analyst. So I can understand that part. However, if we put aside the qualification, you would need someone who's got the experience. The experience makes up for the lack of qualification, and clearly this person doesn't have that either. Now, the question I ask is, if on his social media he hadn't put Barcelona qualified analyst, would we have known about this? No, we wouldn't. The reason I say this is because this is not the first time. It won't be the last time. This has happened down the years for the last 40 odd years. nepotism and favoritism in Iran has been, again, it's been underlined and highlighted so much in every industry. And to expect football to be different is almost, is a bit silly. So although absolutely right, we should have professionals, people who have the right experience with the right knowledge, you know, I can guarantee you on every single regime in Iran, in terms of every single football manager or federation president, this would have happened. Someone behind the scenes working directly with the national team would have been there underqualified and would have been there undeservedly. Despite Iran, I can guarantee you there would have been, I can't remember, is it Mehdad Khandan? Is that one? Very good analyst. Again, I'm sure he doesn't have UEFA licenses either.
I think he's got AFC licenses.
So that's the point.
And also
that you don't necessarily need to have UEFA licenses for you to be good quality for Iran's level. Yeah. But this person doesn't have either. And I don't think he'll be the only one right now either. I think there'll be other ones who just don't know that.
I will add, there was another guy who was also the analyst under Skocic, also Iranian. He got the job at Leuven in Belgium, where Coverizzo is playing. He was an analyst under Skocic. He was Mehdi Hossein-Pour. He's a performance analyst. He's been coaching, not coaching, he's been involved with the U23s, the U19s of Iran, U17s of Iran. He's been involved for a long time with the national teams. And then he got a job under Skocic. And then after that, he moved to Belgium where Coverizzo was playing through his contacts. But he still got a job because he's got the qualifications, the experience to do so. So we do have good Iranian analysts, you know. To say that we don't is a bit of it's not true. We do have it. They just haven't done the research, the federation, to get somebody who actually deserves a job.
And whose decision is it to hire these guys, to vet these guys, to interview these guys, and to give them the job?
It's a very good question. It's the coach's job, isn't it? It is the head coach. Well, the coach's job is to get his coaching staff in and make sure his coaching staff are up to par. The federation are the ones who are going to pay for it. So both of them need to kind of do it. The federation need to know who they're paying.
In other federations, there's usually a technical committee, let's say, who makes these decisions. So they would be the ones who appoint the manager and also appoint the other members of staff. When they bring in a manager, they usually ask him, do you have anyone else that you want to work with in terms of coaching staff? I don't think every manager would choose every single analyst in the team, but there's usually some kind of, like I said, technical team who makes those decisions. I don't expect Iran to have anything professionally as close as that in place right now. So I wouldn't be surprised, like Arya said, it'd be a mix of federation and Ghaleneoi. And federation wouldn't want to pay over what they have to. And it's very likely this guy would have been recommended to Ghaleneoi to say, hey, we have this guy, this is what he does, etc. This is who we know. And Ghaleneoi would have probably accepted it.
Under Queiroz, the analyst was João Paixeiro, who is a very experienced analyst. He might have seen the pictures where he had the cameras set up for the training sessions. And I met him in Austria as well in the camp, and he was actually sitting at the stand, sending feedback back to the coaches with a headpiece. That's standard for any club to do that, but very professionally done. And
he wouldn't have been the only analyst. They would have. Usually at least 3 or 4.
It wasn't. Yeah, it was. He wasn't. He was the head analyst. So, point being, he was a very qualified analyst. Whether or not he did a good job, it's a completely different story. It's about the principle. If you're going to hire somebody, they have to have qualifications or experience. If you have neither, you shouldn't get a job. It doesn't matter if you're great at your job. I can say, oh, I'm a great coach. It doesn't make a difference. I'm not qualified enough to coach a national team. I'm not experienced enough to coach a national team, so I shouldn't do it. You know what I mean? So it doesn't make any sense, but it is what it is. He's got the job, so hopefully, best of luck to him. I hope he does well, right? But he didn't deserve it. Simple as that.
As we continue the next couple months, the next group of matches that Iran will be preparing for, it'll be after the club season ends. It is the I guess inaugural the CAFA tournament. Are we calling it CAFA?
CAFA, yeah.
It's the Central Asian Football Association holding the first tournament in 2020 2023 for June 21st or 9th through the 21st. It's all 6 member associations are going to take part: Iran, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, and Afghanistan. And Russia has also been confirmed for their participation. This will be in Uzbekistan, by the way. So in Uzbekistan, they're hoping to get one more Asian team. But yeah, nonetheless, it'll be 8 teams, a mixture of competition for Iran, the toughest of which Russia they've already played. What do we think about this from a distance? So obviously we're going to do a preview on it when time comes, but what do we think so far of this?
Well, I mean, obviously Iran used to play in the WAFF, right? The West Asian competition. That's not the case anymore. They came out of that, so now they play CAFA, which is involving obviously the Central Asian teams. They had competitions for youth level for a long time, and this is the first senior competition that will be played in June. Russia will be involved, so a decent team there. It'll be interesting. You know, it's always good to be guaranteed matches, right? Good to be guaranteed competitiveness, you know, and for Iran, because they can't always guarantee to get more than 2 friendlies. So the fact that they guaranteed it is good. Now, the level of competition is not good, but that's something that's a different story completely. But does it qualify as a preparation for the Asian Cup? Sina? I don't know.
I think any competitive football, although yes, you know, the competition is not going to be that's important, but it's still competitive to a certain extent, and I think that's always good. Putting aside Russia, Uzbekistan is going to be there, which is always they're a good team, they're a good quality Asian team, and team that we may very likely face in the Asian Cup as well. And the difference in quality in the tournament means you can do what we mentioned earlier, that you give chance to younger players, to players maybe who are not that experienced, but at the same time you get to see the more experienced players, the team that you want to play in the Asian Cup against good quality opposition. So I think it would be good for the national team if used properly and maximize this potential.
It'll be nice to win it. When's the last?
Don't raise your expectations too high.
Here's a good trivia question. What's the last trophy Team Melli had? Was it WAFF?
Yes, but also if you go further back slightly, one that I remember it was celebrated a lot in Iran. I think it was the Asian Games in the year 2000 in Busan, where Iran beat, I think it was Japan, and Jahanbakhsh was the manager. So that team would have been, and we can get this confirmed, but I think it was an under-23s team with 3 players over 23, and we won that game. And I remember it was a big deal when it happened. And it was I think it was also part of the reason why Jahanbakhsh ended up getting the job after Blažević, because he was the assistant manager who was given the senior role for that particular competition.
Well, speaking of players getting trophies, there's a good chance Jahanbakhsh might for Feyenoord. Been doing very well for his club. And Azmoun, was it 3 goals in the last 4 matches, guys? So we definitely don't want to leave that out. That is very good news.
Yeah, Jahanbakhsh doing really well. Got an assist today as well as a recording. Azmoun scored last night. Hopefully that translates into national team form. Jahanbakhsh didn't play particularly well against Kenya either. So overall, we'll see what happens. There's, again, lots of players missing, lots of improvements to be made. So yeah, a lot of time to go.
All right. Any final thoughts, guys, before we wrap this thing up?
No, it was great to be sitting next to Sina today. And
I did offer him tea and coffee lots of times, but he tore us a lot.
Well, the ultimate goal is to one day have all of us for one microphone or one place for an episode. That would be awesome.
I don't know how we would do it, because we're always using Zoom. We don't know how we would actually set it up, but we'll get it. We'll figure it out.
The harder part is getting Samson to visit the UK.
That's the thing.
No, we need you guys to come to like Los Angeles, or better yet, Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I am. Let's do that.
You want to fly out 4 guys to the States rather than you coming to the UK?
Yeah, that's a bit. Selfish Sina.
Nah, yeah, I'll bet I'll get some Ryanair
Well,
tickets. Yeah.
me and the other two Sinas will organize something though for sure. That's one of the things we have to do this year.
Or we could all meet for the Beach World Cup in Dubai. Who knows? No, well, for all those who stuck with us through the end of this episode, we really thank you for watching, especially on YouTube. If you get the chance, please subscribe to us. It really helps us out, as well as maybe donate on Patreon. We're always welcoming anyone to become patrons. It really helps us out. It sets up good episodes like this, good microphones, good editing systems, and it ensures a good future for Gold Bezan to keep you up to date with all things Team Melli and football in Iran. That's on top of course, the usual social medias, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, where we post updates to Legionnaires and the latest news for the national team. So that's it for now. Arya, Sina, I really thank you guys for taking part.
Yeah, appreciate it. We're also going to have Irfan back on about the Persian Gulf Pro League at some point, so just stay tuned for that. But yeah, good to speak about the national team, and hopefully things get better going forward.
Thank you both, and thank you Samson for hosting as well. Always an amazing job.
Yeah, thanks guys, and we'll see you next time for another edition of Gold Bezan.
Hello, my name is Yasaman Farmani.
Hello, my name is Alireza, and you are listening to
Gold Bezan podcast.